Hi, and welcome to Tell Your Story, your online library presence. This screencast is going to be embedded on this slide right here, and I want you to notice that up in the upper left-hand corner, there is a bit.ly link, bit.ly/online story 19, which is where this slide deck is available. So like I said, this video is going to be embedded right there. I am Nancy Jo Lambert. I am the librarian at Reedy High School in Frisco, Texas. I heard Mark Ray say this at a SLJ Summit years and years ago. He said, teach more, librarian less. And I've kind of taken that on as my mantra. You can find me on Twitter at Nancy Jo Lambert, and I have a website all about my professional work. NancyJoLambert.com is my professional website. So you can find out more about me there, and there's links to other presentations and resources that I'm known for are also on that site. So be sure and check that out. So this particular screencast and set of slides is about designing your online presence. Many librarians have some sort of library website, or they have a website on their schools, or they have a link on their school site or something. And I feel like a lot of times librarians really focus on, well, I've got my databases and my catalog online. What else do I need? And in this day and age, you need more than that. You need to be telling the story of what's going on in your library, the learning and what the students are doing and how you're contributing to student achievement. No longer is it acceptable for you to just make a little site with links to your catalog and your databases and then move on. Part of what we have to do now is advocate for what's going on in our libraries. And the best way for you to do that is to have an online presence. Okay. So I'm going to take you through kind of my advice and my recommendations for designing your online presence. We're going to talk about what the current popular social media is. We're going to talk about looking at your stakeholders. We're going to talk about district and school policies regarding social media and websites and those types of things. And then we're going to dive into my tips for having a library website, creating a library website, and then also having library social media channels. So this is kind of the flow of what's going to be on this screencast and what's in this slide deck. All right, so let's talk about social media. There are so many different social media platforms out there, and part of what we as librarians have to know is what social media is even out there. I love this Molly Wetta. I don't know who she is, but in an article I read in SLJ in 2016, she said librarians and library workers who serve teens know that staying up on trends, including those related to social media marketing, is just part of the job. I cannot stress that enough anymore. Having social media and having an online website and a presence, that is part of our job now. It is not optional. It is something that we have to do. So let's talk about what are the most popular social media. So I consulted the Pew Research Center, which is a go-to source for me when I'm looking for information about social media. They do some great surveys and work there. So I kind of want you to just think for a minute, what do you think in 2018 and bleeding over into 2019, because we're about halfway through 2019 right now as I'm making this video, do you think are the most popular social media sites? So just be thinking about that, and I'm going to tell you what the number one most popular social media site is, and that's YouTube. YouTube right now is the most popular social media site. And many people will be like, but that's not really social media. Oh, but it is. There are so many YouTubers now who that's what's making them famous. People are becoming famous because of YouTube, and people interact a lot on YouTube through the comments, through live YouTube streams where people can chat and stuff on the side. YouTube is no longer, I don't know that it ever was, but it is not just a place to go and watch videos. I know that's what a lot of older generations use it for, just to watch videos, but our kids and our teens are using it for much, much more than that. Facebook is the second most popular social media. I'm sure you're not surprised by that. Most adults are on Facebook, have a Facebook. I'm no longer on Facebook. I had to walk away from that social media. Wasn't good for my soul, but it is one of the most popular social medias, especially among adults. And when I say adults, I'm talking people older than 25. Instagram is the third most popular social media, and I really see with the younger people, and you're going to see this in a minute with the data that I'm going to show you. We are really seeing an explosion of Instagram. So anymore, if you're not using Instagram, that's fine. But when it comes to your library, especially if you work in middle school or high school, that is something you're going to need to really learn about and bring into your library repertoire. All right, so the report that I'm talking about is linked right here. So you can click on this link and see what report I'm talking about, where I got this data. But I'm going to focus on this chart right here for just a minute. So you see right there that YouTube, 73% of people are using YouTube online and on their cell phones, and then Facebook trailing just behind there at 69%, and then Instagram leading the pack of the other social medias down there with 37%. On this report, if you want to, you can click on this report, and they give you a breakdown by age of which, actually, I'm going to go ahead and click on this. I wasn't going to, but I think I want to go ahead and show you this right here. So this is use of different online platforms by demographic groups. So you see here we've got men, women, we've got different races, and then down here, this is what I find to be some of the more interesting part is the ages, what their education level is, whether they're urban, suburban, rural. So you can kind of go through and look at each of these social medias and then see based on age group how it varies. Now you'll notice in ages 18 to 29, you've got 28%, or sorry, Snapchat, you've got 62% of people ages 18 to 29 using Snapchat. And then those numbers go way down, but you can kind of go through and see. And on Instagram, you've got 67% of this age group right here using Instagram. And so while Facebook is still pretty high, some of these other social medias are really really coming around there. So I just wanted to show you that, and you can click on and look at that report a little more closely. I don't want to dwell on that for too long because I do want to talk about your stakeholders. The point of me showing you this most recent Pew Research poll really has to do with stakeholders. Depending on what age group of students you work with will vary greatly as to what social media you should use. And when you're thinking about developing a social media presence, you are not just looking to connect with your students, although that is our primary population to connect with, but how do you connect with the teachers and the other staff on your campus, the families of the students that go to your school, and then also the larger community. Remember, when you start these social media channels, the larger community can look on there and see, what's going on in the school and what's going on in your library through your social media. So what I'm going to talk about now is that you really have to know what social media your stakeholders prefer so that you can be the most effective with your efforts. And so what I'm saying is it's really good, at the start of the school year, if you have a meet the teacher night or, bring your supplies to school night or whatever your school or district calls it or has, I would set up a QR code and be at a table where everybody comes in, and I'd be like, hey, when you're coming back by after you've gone to your child's classroom, scan this QR code or give them a link and say, would you just take this poll? And even if I get, a third of the people that walk through the door to respond, then I can still gauge from there, what social medias people are using. You can also put a link in a newsletter. If your principal or your campus sends out a newsletter, put a link in there, what social media is everybody using? You can do informal polls by asking your students. You can send an email blast home with a link in it, but you want to find out what social media your kids are using and the parents. So that way you can gauge, which social medias are going to be the most effective to reach all those people. Send one out to your staff too. What social media do you use, and just make them very quick and easy. 1 or 2 questions. Don't ask them 25 questions because they're not going to take it. But if you just ask them one or two questions real quick, anonymous surveys. People will tend to do those. And then you can get a really good idea of what social media people would be most receptive to. And this brings me to policy. When it comes to social media for your district, your school system, or your school, make sure that you are really paying attention to what is the policy. So I am a parent of two children in my own school district where I work. And every year I am asked to, as part of the registration process of my children, to either say, yes, my students' information can be released, or no, it can't. If I say yes, they can release everything that my students, let's see, I'm going to try and directory information. So Frisco ISD, generally, we do not associate a student's full name and their image on public websites or channels unless we check with the parent for permission. They say generally we do not associate, but that doesn't mean that they can't. Certain information is considered directory information and can be released. Yes, my students' limited information is listed above can be used to promote school programs and student achievements for school district sponsored publications, websites, and educational programming such as the yearbook, graduation programs, playbills, the FISD cable channel, athletic programs, etc., and include social media. So if they say no, their kid can't even be in the yearbook, much less on anything else. So every campus has a no photo list. And generally, if parents say no to this, they don't know what they're doing. And so I work at high school now. And so if I know kids are on the no photo list, because every year I go and ask for that no photo list, then I usually go to the kid first and say, hey, did you know your parent put you on the no photo list? And I said, and I tell them, and you can't even be in the yearbook. And they're like, what? So they text their parents right away and request that their parents change that with our registrar and data clerk. When I worked at elementary, I would ask one of the APs or the data clerk to make phone calls to those parents, be like, hey, did you know that you said no to this? And most of the time on every campus I've been on, and I've been on 5 different campuses in my district, pre-K through 12, most of the time the parents will change that and opt to change that. I've only had in all my years, this is my I'm getting ready to start my 9th year as a librarian, and I've only ever had a handful of kids remain on that no photo list. So know your policy, and then be prepared to be proactive about, getting kids off of it, because that's really going to limit, who you can have on your social media channels. All right, so now let's talk about websites. So I'm going to talk about my website in particular, because I feel like it's really important that we have a web presence. But I'm going to talk about my website in particular in just a minute. First, we're going to talk about why. Why is having a library website so important right now? One of the reasons I feel like it's important is because you can put out there so much information to share with your stakeholders about what's happening in your library, the teaching and the learning that goes on in your library. This last year in our state, we faced a bill that was going through our state Senate, and they were going to give classroom teachers a $5,000 raise. And they excluded librarians from this. The language in the bill excluded librarians. So I actually went and testified on behalf of the Texas Association of School Librarians that librarians are teachers too. And I was able to testify on that fact based on the many different things that I had done in my library just in that last month. So my testimony talked about all the different things I had taught just in that last month. And then I was able to refer to those things for evidence based on what I had posted on my own website. So it's really important to show the teaching and the learning that's happening in your library and at your school by having all that somewhere. It benefits your stakeholders because then they can go back to that information again and again if they need it. It's always there. And then one of the reasons I'm so adamant about having a library website is because I share everything that I do. And I don't just share it for the purposes of the students and teachers and the stakeholders in my school, but I share it for the larger education community, for other school librarians and other educators. I've had so many people throughout the years email me and contact me and thank me for putting things on my website. And I've done the same to other people. When I find things online that I want to, borrow or use, I do the same thing. So I feel like, we're only helping each other. We are better together when we put that information out there. Also, most of us, the culture of our schools and the culture of education and the culture of our students really lends itself to having that kind of online presence. I'm not going to go through this, but if you peruse this slide deck, you'll notice that these are key recommendations for effective storytelling that I got from an SLJ article a while back. And I feel like these are really good questions to look at and think about as you are developing your online web presence through your website and social media. So, this is what my library website looks like here. And I'm going to go ahead and show you click over to my actual library website. So, this is my actual library website. And you'll notice up here, I have links to the different social media channels that I use. And then here I have pages with information for students, parents, anyone that comes to my website. I have a welcome video over here. I have all the things that I've been doing, and it's summer now, but that I was doing this last school year. And then over here on the side, I have various different links and images so that people can link to all those different things. So I'm going to get into that more as we move along here. Whoops. I will tell you that for my website is actually a blog. It's an EduBlog. And I get nothing from EduBlogs for using. In fact, I pay for my website every year. I pay a fee to have a pro site. But I think that a blog is a great choice because it allows stakeholders to comment and interact. They can ask questions. You can use it for lessons. It's great digital citizenship modeling, and it's also so interactive. So I feel like a blog is a really, really great choice for a library website versus just a static site for all those reasons. When you are creating your library website, I would highly encourage you to make sure that you can that it's mobile friendly. So when you choose a theme or you're choosing a platform, make sure that they have a mobile friendly view whenever you're setting it up, because anymore everybody uses their phones more than anything else. All right, so like I said, the setup of my website, I have the pages. And so these are my pages. So you'll notice here I have my catalog linked. I have access to ebooks linked here. I have a library FAQ. I have our library policy. I have some research help things, student links, and then some help things over here. So I show you this because these are the items, these are the things that are my static resources, information that stakeholders want to come back to again and again, right? When I worked at elementary, I had a lot more teacher resources on my library page, on my library website than I do now because at my high school, the teachers just, that's just not how it works for them. But when I was at elementary, I had a lot more teacher resources there. So there's some questions there to help you think about what pages you need for your library and your stakeholders. So I encourage you to look at those questions and think about that. Okay, so posts on my, because I use a blog, I'm able to post different things at different times. So you'll notice like this is a blog post that I wrote about why we need diverse books and my reading journey over the last school year. So I wrote a blog post about my reading journey, and then I'm so sorry. And then you'll notice here, I created this sign and I said, I created this originally for my staff, but then I put a copy there that people could go in and make for their own. And then I put a virtual shelf of all the books that I had read this last school year on that blog post. So that is an example of one type of post. Another type of post, I saw my functional academics kids towards the end of the year. And when they came in, we read Dan Santat's After the Fall. And then they created some Flipgrid videos about, we talked about, how important it is. We reflected on that, how important it is to look back on their year of learning and look at how they changed and the things that they had accomplished. And so then I had a sheet right here. So this reflection guide, I linked that there. And then the kids, we put their Flipgrid videos here, and then they each got to take with them a easy a paper bird that was inspired by the book. And so then some of the other things you'll notice here. So this is an example of a lesson that I did with my To Kill a Mockingbird class. We had a Mac and Via group, and then they had a video helper here because they were making podcasts. So this was a video helper on the research process, and then that was a link to their Mac and Via group. So you can see all the different types of things that I put on posts for my library website. Like this one right here was just a link to some stations. So they clicked on this and it took them to some stations for a project that they were doing in class. So this is an example of a hyperdoc. And so the kids went through this and did this activity. So you'll notice that I just have lots of different types of posts on here. I'm very big on making sure that my posts are categorized and tagged, because I go back and reference my own stuff or find it for other people all the time. So you'll notice here I have all my different categories, and then the tags. I thought I had a tag. It might be if I click it. Let me just click on one over here. So then here are the different tags. So I always tag things with what they're about. And so that way too, I can go back and search them up that way. So it's really important. I also put, pictures, video, all kinds of things that I do there on my library website, because it's a nice archive then of everything that happened. Widgets are huge. I have lots of widgets over here. I think something is a little amiss with my site right now, but because this should be a picture, this should be a picture. So you'll notice they click on this, they can go to Sora. I have some static resources here for a few of the classes. So this was a static resource for AP Research. This was for one of my science teachers that had a static activity, our ISM, and then normally my Twitter feed would be right there. And then you can see my Instagram posts, Pinterest. So widgets are great because you can put all kinds of different things in here. So there I'm recognizing that we use TextQuest. There's a little video here that just welcomes people to the library. So widgets are a great tool for if you have a blog that you can get different code and embed different things that way there. So what I want to close with about having a library website is when you Google your library, what comes up? Are there resources that are valuable to your students, stakeholders, the people in your community? Because when they Google Reedy Library, all the resources that I want them to see come up, both in the all search and then also when they click on images or videos. So that's just something to consider as you're creating a library website is Google your library. What do you want to come up when people Google your library? All right, so now we're going to move into social media. All right, and I'm going to give you my social media setup tips. I'm not going to go over each of these super closely because they're right here for you, but I always recommend that people create a Gmail address for their library. Don't use your school address. Use a Gmail. Set up a Gmail like mine is reedylibrary@gmail.com. And the purpose of this is so then you can set that up with a very generic password, and then you can start all the social media accounts that you want to use for your library using that Gmail. Now what happens is if you leave that campus or you go to a different school or a different district or a different state, then you can pass that email address and those social media accounts onto the next person who's in your library, and they're not tied to you. And this goes over to the last thing here, the professional accounts. I would not set up any of my social media accounts that I want to have for me personally or professionally with my school email. I always create my own personal email and set up my personal account. So my Nancy Jo Lambert Twitter is something that's associated with my Nancy Jo Lambert at gmail.com, because then Should I ever leave my school or my district, I can take my Twitter account with me, and it's not associated with my school. It's very much my professional account. Um, so when you're creating your social media accounts, create a logo. Don't use your picture on your school library's Twitter account. Create a logo, use that. Make sure your bio is short and sweet, links back to your library website. There shouldn't be your personal stuff and your personal ideas and your personal beliefs on your school's social media. These need to be reflective of an organization or a business, not you. And then it's really important too to populate your channels with content. No one wants to follow, like, or add a social media account that has nothing on it. So make sure that you populate those social media accounts with the things that are going on in your school. So I'm going to quickly go through. So here is what my Reedy High School Library Twitter account looks like. You'll notice I have a pinned tweet here, and then everything that's on this is something from my school or about my school or something library related or something about my district, that kind of thing. And then my Instagram, same thing. I have Reedy High School Library, and then lots and lots of Instagram posts that are directly related to and about my library and the things that are going on in my school and in my library. Snapchat, I don't have any examples of Snapchat because those go away, but I do have a library Snapchat, and I will post to that pretty regularly. And then Pinterest, I have a Pinterest account, and more I have the Pinterest account because then I can share like when I want my kids or when I want my library aides to help me, make a bulletin board, or I want them to help me, redo the trophy case or something like that. I can put some things on a board and then send them the link and be like, here, make something happen. And then I also put research stuff and other information on here as well. So that is that. And then YouTube. YouTube is so important. This is my library YouTube channel. I have 495 subscribers. I'm not even sure how many videos are on here. It's a lot though. I'm not sure it even says. I think it does on my back end, but it's a lot of videos. I have thousands of videos on here, and YouTube is just so important. You can make playlists on YouTube for different research purposes. When I was at elementary, I would make playlists of the classroom projects that we were working on, and then type up the email for the teachers to send out to parents so the parents would know that the kids came to the library and did that learning and did that project creation, and that I was the one making it available to them. But having a YouTube channel is so important because anymore, that's how we all learn. We're all learning by watching videos. And so, especially our kids. So I make sure and have a presence on YouTube as well. LinkedIn is something that I always bring up because so many of my kids anymore are using LinkedIn and connecting with me on LinkedIn and wanting me to endorse them for their leadership or their scholarship or their academic things that they're doing in our school. And so as NHS co-advisor and as somebody who works with some of our highest achieving kids in ISM and some of our AP classes, this is a really, really important social media for them that they are using. And so by me being there and being able to endorse the kids and work with them in that social media is a great digital citizenship modeling as well. All right, so you're like, man, Nancy Jo, this is a lot of social medias and things to keep up with. How do I do this? I'm going to suggest to you, and I use if this, then that. And make sure that when you use this, that you set up recipes that make sense. If you're going to send something from one social media to another so you don't have to post in both, make sure that you have made sense of what you're sending where. And so when it shows up on that other social media, people aren't like, why is this here? But use something like if then this that or some other tool some other online tools so that when you post in one place, it automatically sends it to the other, and it'll cut down on some of that work of posting in multiple social media places. But also, I want to say about this is, there are certain things that I put on certain social media sites, and then there are, oftentimes where I'm not doing it on every single one. I might post something solely on Instagram, or I might post something solely on Twitter, or I might put something solely on Pinterest, and that's okay. You don't have to post to every social media every day, nor do you have to put the same post on every social media. So just be aware of that. The credits for this, I did get this presentation from Slides Carnival, so I want to let's say thank you to Slides Carnival, as well as the watercolor textures came from Graphic Burger. Any photographs in this presentation were my own, and I made the GIFs using Snagit by TechSmith. If you guys have any questions or anything, don't ever hesitate to reach out to me on Twitter or fill out my contact form at nancyjolambert.com. But I'm always willing to help people, especially as they're venturing into this process. And I know it can be daunting. So thanks so much for joining me for this screencast. And like I said, please let me know if there's ever anything I can do to help.